right, recording in progress. Good morning, everybody. There's Matt. Hello, Matt. And there's, oh gosh, who else is that? I do not know. Is that Jan or Jan? Jan? You can unmute yourself. It's our lovely.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Hello. Jan,
Hi there.
is it
Good
Jan
morning.
or Jan or John, or how do we pronounce?
Hey, you there will work too. My name is Jan.
Wonderful. And where are you coming from, Jan?
I'm with Youth for Christ Grand Valley, and so I represent Grand Valley, Orangeville, and Fergus.
Awesome.
Hey, Mark.
And there's Mark from Youth for
and
Christ.
Others.
Awesome. All right.
Hey,
Well, it's a small little gathering.
Hey,
so we got Mark from Youth for Christ. Good to see you, Mark. And we got Matt Naismith from Church in the City of the City. Welcome, Matt.
Hey guys, good to be here. Thanks for putting this together.
So we are going to record today, and I'll flip it out to the folks that I sent it out before. Great to welcome Danny Williamson and Anna Vanderlaan to share a little something from Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Public Health around vaccine rollouts, and maybe to answer some of our questions. Yeah, well, I'll flip it over to them. They're going to do a little presentation, I think, and then take our questions as we might have them. And thanks for joining us today, guys. Lots of gratitude to public health. Most people probably didn't really know that public health was a thing until this pandemic hit. I mean, it's always been a thing, but wow, hey. And so thanks and gratitude to everything you guys have been doing personally, but also to everybody in public health as you continue to adapt to every single change that happens every second of the day. Thanks so much. I'll let you guys talk.
Yeah, we're normally like the referees. We're at our happiest and best when you don't really see us. So this has been an interesting 14 or 15 months for us. So thank you, Reverend John. As he said, I'm Danny Williamson, and obviously that is Anna Vanderlaan. Thanks for making a little time for us this morning. And the reason why we're having this conversation, and many like it in what Anna and I call our traveling roadshow, she and I are really rolling out our collection of blazers over the last few weeks and the coming several. But the reason is you've obviously all seen tons of kind of media and ads, radio ads, newspaper ads, the whole gamut from public health over the course of the pandemic and more recently over the vaccination program. And we'll continue to do that until we get out of this colossal mess of COVID-19. But what we also know is people need to hear from people they trust. And so we are having many conversations with faith leaders, with neighborhood groups, with campuses, with municipalities to make sure the people who have an audience and an interest in the COVID vaccination rollout have the information they need and the support they need to have those conversations, whomever their audience may be. So with that long intro, looking for a period complete, I'll turn over to Anna to talk a little bit about how vaccines are going locally here.
Thanks so much, Danny. So yeah, like Danny said, we're hopefully going to give you the tools that will empower you to have some conversations with people who place a lot of trust in you. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of what's happening locally with our vaccine rollout, and then talk through a couple frequently asked questions, do a bit of myth busting, and then turn it over to Danny to take us home and tell us about how to be a vaccine champion. So first up is some good news. So to date, we've done 144,000 first doses in our region. So 144,000 residents protected with at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. And that's around 56, 57%. And then we look at this by age, it makes a lot of sense because we did start with the folks who were the oldest and kind of have worked our way down now. We've actually, as you might have heard in the news, recently got into vaccinating some of our 12 plus population. So basically, our overall goal is to get to vaccinating 75% of the eligible population. So you can see in some of our older groups, we've really knocked it out of the park here. We're at 97% with our 80 pluses, which is wonderful. And we'd like to see something similar with our other age groups. So how do we get to this goal, and sort of how can you help? So if we do a little bit of back of the napkin, as we call it here at Public Health, like I said, we've given about 144,000 doses to date. We have about 42,000 more booked appointments between now and the end of June. But we need to get to around 202,000 to get to that 75%. So we need your help and the help of everyone in our community to find an additional 16,000 residents who haven't gotten a first dose yet, who are eligible. So right now, there are 4 vaccines that are approved for use in Canada. There's 2 types. It's an mRNA type and a viral vector type. So of the mRNA type, you've likely heard of the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine. As I said, recently Pfizer went down to being approved to 12 and over, which is great news, means more people can be protected. Moderna is still at 18 plus, but the way that these trials happen is that we start with like a large cross section of the adult population, and then we work our way down in stages to younger and younger kids. So it doesn't mean that because Pfizer is approved for 12 plus, it would be dangerous for an 11-year-old. What it just means is that we haven't had all the trial data come through to a point where Health Canada can update our recommendation. But there are ongoing trials for both Moderna and Pfizer, I think to around 2 years old. So that's really good news, and we're expecting some updates on that soon. There's also the AstraZeneca vaccine and the Janssen or the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So the J&J we don't have in Canada yet, although it's approved. And AstraZeneca, we'll talk to you in a moment. It's a bit more of a convoluted story, but we'll give you some information to arm you to have some conversations about it if it does come up. But this is really amazing news. Like it was sort of unheard of a year ago when we first stepped into this pandemic that we could have 3 really great vaccines developed and available in our community so quickly. So how do you get to the vaccine? In Wellington, Dufferin, and Guelph, you can pre-register for a vaccine at our website along the bottom there, which is just /register. The way we do pre-registration is that it allows us to contact you as soon as you are eligible. So right now, we're in what is called phase 3, which is exciting, which means vaccination is open for anyone. So you no longer have to fit a specific criteria from the provincial framework. It's really anyone 12 and over can book an appointment. So what we have you do is register on this website, and then within about 5 days, you'll receive a booking code in your email, and then you can book at any one of our public health sites. Oh, come on, there we go. And there's other places that you can get the vaccine apart from public health as well. So many primary care providers and local pharmacies have both Moderna and Pfizer. And we just encourage you, if you're more comfortable, or if folks you're talking to are a bit more comfortable receiving it from their doctor or from a local pharmacy, that they're more than welcome to call to check availability there. And the provincial website keeps an updated list of all the pharmacies that have vaccine as well. Okay, so a couple of frequently asked questions that are useful for you to maybe have in your back pocket. They're questions that we get a lot, and I'm sure that if you start having conversations about vaccination, you might get them a lot too. So this is a very common myth that the vaccine development was rushed. Because it really does seem like we've never developed a vaccine quite this quickly. But there are a few things that enabled us to do so. So first off, you should know that Health Canada will only approve a vaccine under a set of criteria. So it must be safe, it must work, it must be effective, it must meet all of our manufacturing standards, which are one of the highest standards in the world, and the benefits must outweigh the risks. So when we get to the fact that we have 4 approved vaccines, how did this happen so quickly? So of course, because this was a global event, there was a lot of dedicated funding to support research, development, and approval. we were able to reduce some delays in the approval process, which is a really neat thing. So often when you're doing a clinical trial for a vaccine, you start with group A, do their piece, write it all up, submit it to journals, and then you move on to group B. And you kind of have to do phases A through E. But what we were able to do with these vaccines is kind of start phase A, B, and C all at the same time, run those all in parallel, and then move on. And so that was a really great way that we were able to speed that process up. The technology for these vaccines has existed for a decade or more. So really it was just taking that existing technology and adapting it to this brand new virus. And then, yeah, like I said, we were able to kind of change the design of our trials to make it so that we could reduce those delays and it didn't all have to be stepwise. This one also comes up quite a bit, side effects for the vaccine. So basically, anytime that you get a vaccine, you're likely to have some mild to moderate side effects. And what that means is that your immune system is kicking in and working. So these are good things. So sometimes it's pain at the injection site, headache, fatigue, bit of muscle and joint pain, maybe chills and a fever. So that's sort of the most common thing that happens. It often happens, within the first 3 days after vaccination and won't last for very long. And the medical and scientific community is quite confident that the long-term safety of COVID-19 vaccines will hold true. There's nothing in this technology, and like I said, this technology has existed for decades or more, to suggest that there are any long-term consequences that we should be looking out for. This is another very common question. People just want to get one dose and be done. So all of the vaccines that we're currently offering in Wellington, Dufferin, and Guelph are 2-dose vaccines. So we like to say the first dose gives you a nice layer of protection. The second dose helps extend that protection over a longer period of time. So definitely the first dose, very effective, very, very good to do. But it's also really important that we encourage folks to get their second dose, because that's what's going to help extend their protection. And as we learn more and more about this from all of the global trials, we might learn more about, the need for boosters or other things later on down the line. Maybe with all the different variants that exist globally, it'll be a slight modification on the vaccine later on down the line. But for now, we know that 2-dose protection is the best way to go. This is the vaccine shopping question. So we get lots of folks who want to vaccine shop. They come to our clinics and it's a Pfizer day, but hey, they want a Moderna, so they leave. But our best advice is get vaccinated as soon as you are able. So if you are offered a vaccine, don't turn it down. Because really the longer you wait, the longer that you remain unprotected against COVID-19. And then you're not helping boost our herd immunity, and you're not protecting those around you either. So basically what we can say is there's really no guarantee of getting a specific brand of vaccine at any point. So if you came to our clinic to say, hey, I wanted Moderna, not Pfizer, I can't promise you that next time you come, we'll have Moderna. What I can say, though, about the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines, which are the 2 vaccines that public health currently offers, is that they are nearly biologically identical. It's really like there's 2 vials of vaccine, and one is wrapped in blue paper and one is wrapped in red. So, there's lots of articles online and other things that speak to that. And folks kind of get it in their head that one might be better than the other. But really, and you're free to share this as well, that they're very similar vaccines. And the AstraZeneca question. So I did promise I'd get back to this one. So I'm sure you've heard in the news, and maybe you received the AstraZeneca vaccine yourself. There is a very rare risk of blood clots associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine. So what we tell people at public health is that whatever vaccine you got, you made the right choice to get it. Because every person who got that AstraZeneca vaccine protected themselves and protected the people around them. So there, I think it might be a tiny bit higher, but at the time that I wrote this slide, there were 8 instances of what we call vaccine-induced immune thrombotic thrombocytopenia, or VIT, which I fully prefer to say because it's quite a mouthful. So it's a very, very rare, but very serious type of blood clot. So really, by identifying these cases, what that means is that our vaccine surveillance system is working really, really well, because we were able to find these super, super rare things and figure out how they were related to this vaccine. So what we do tell people is that if you did receive the AstraZeneca vaccine, it's been between 4 and 28 days or so, and you develop some of the signs and symptoms listed on the slide, you should absolutely contact your doctor or visit an emergency room immediately. But again, this is a very, very rare side effect. So actually, the provincial government did come out, I believe on Friday, to say that folks who did get AstraZeneca as their first dose, they are eligible to get AstraZeneca as their second dose. So we weren't sure exactly where that guidance would go. So it seems as if folks will be fully able to get AstraZeneca as their second dose. And a good thing to note is that if you didn't have this very rare side effect the first time you got AstraZeneca, it's less likely that you'd have it the second time as well. So that's good news. But for folks who are still feeling uncomfortable about this vaccine as their second dose, it looks like it may be possible for them to get one of our mRNA vaccines, so Pfizer or Moderna. We're just still waiting for some more information from the provincial government about that. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Danny for the fun part of the presentation, how to be a vaccine champion.
It's always concerning to me that somebody introduces me as the fun part, but here we go. So really what all this comes down to is that the vaccines work. They work better than we thought in the trials, and we have a lot of them on the way. And so as those two things kind of come together, what that means is the vaccines are really they're our off-ramp from the pandemic. So the sooner we can get to those targets that the province laid out in the roadmap, the sooner we get back to something more normal. And I think this group, I think, certainly can understand and certainly is keen to the value of us being able to gather together. I think that's something really important, and the vaccines are the way that we get there. And so the way that we often talk about this whole vaccine champions idea is because we know this. So Anna talked about our numbers, that we're approaching 75%, but we're not there yet. And that represents kind of the keenest group of folks in the region regarding the vaccine. We know that there is a group who will never get the vaccine for a variety of reasons. And then that looks like about between sort of 6 and 12% of the region, depending on which numbers you're looking at. Hey, I need you to climb upstairs, okay? Because I'm on a call for work. That's a 4-year-old wandering around the basement. Yes, the convincible middle, of which that was not one of them, because she is an unconvincible force of nature. But we know that there is this group in the middle between the very keen and the will not get vaccinated for a variety of good and bad reasons. But there is this kind of convincible piece in the middle, and that's who we're really talking about. And ultimately, the literature says, our sort of understanding of public health says that many, even most of those folks will ultimately get vaccinated. And we think that they're going to do that for one of 3 reasons. One, the vaccine becomes increasingly convenient to get. As supply increases, the wait times will shrink, the places you can get it will increase. That makes it much easier for people to access it. 2, it will be increasingly inconvenient to not have the vaccine. As you can see, if you look, now that we're starting to catch up, you're going to see more of this conversation in Canada, but you've definitely seen in the US, in the UK, you've seen where the combination of sort of employer-employee relationships, kind of corporate risk management, and government policy have kind of all interacted around where you would need a vaccine to be, or where you would need a vaccine to be without restriction. So we will see some of that, right? We don't know yet because we're very early in this conversation. Travel will be a piece. Probably how your workplace looks will be a piece. How you access various things in the community, the movies, restaurants may also be a piece, but it will be increasingly clear over the coming weeks and months that for some things you will need to have been vaccinated. And the third piece, and this is the piece that I really want to talk to you today, is a big chunk of that group will get vaccinated because of a conversation with someone they trust. And so that's sort of the genesis of this whole program. And if you can just flip over to the next slide, please. So a piece that I'll say here, which I often say, is nobody is required to be a vaccine champion. The reason we're talking to people about this is for people who are both invested in and comfortable with the conversation of getting folks vaccinated. We want to make sure you have what you need. And so a very simple way, we are all on the grim landscape of social media these days. So if you are, and if you go to get either your first or your second shot, that's one of our lovely public health nurses modeling our kind of selfie banners. So take a shot of yourself that day you go in for a shot. And if you're comfortable, talk about why you're getting it. So I will give you an example. My wife is 28 weeks pregnant with our second little one. We have another one who cannot yet get a vaccine. And so really, I am the vector. I am the vector for COVID entering our house. So it was really important to me to get my first shot as soon as I can. And I encourage people to get it as soon as they can. So that's a bit of an overshare from me, but that's the reason why in our family we chose vaccine. So if you're comfortable, and so some are going to be a new baby, but some of them are the movies. Some of them are gathering together in faith. Some of them are hugging people we haven't seen in a year. And all these reasons are valid. And so if you have a reason why, and you're comfortable sharing it, do it. And that's the key. We have a great hashtag, which I can't believe Anna didn't put in her section because she loves it. If she gets a tattoo of it at the end of this pandemic, it would not shock me. It's for you, for me, for WDG. Anna, next slide, please. And you'll see a lot of this conversation coming from public health over the coming weeks. We've had it out for a couple of weeks now. And it'll really start to shift a little bit more to show people where we're going and how close we're getting to our goals. But it's something we encourage people to think about when we're talking about this whole vaccine piece, this whole vaccine champion piece. We're not just getting vaccinated to go and get a shot in the arm and put a vaccine in our body. We're doing it to get back to the important things, right? The big important things, the small important things. But it is really this framing of, of life, right? Of being back to the things that are important to us. Next slide, please. So we really do encourage people to think about the conversation, right? We've got these great stickers that taught, I got my COVID-19 vaccine, and we really encourage people to look for ways for opportunities to have the conversation, right? And I mean, there's only so many things to talk about while we're all locked down in the midst of a global pandemic. So we're all talking about COVID all the time. And, there are lots of opportunities to talk about vaccines, but the underlying piece is, can your experience help someone else make the choice to get vaccinated, or help them think through that decision? Because it is a decision for a lot of us. It is a conversation. It is consideration. And something that both Dr. Mercer and Dr. Tannenbaum, the MOHs of our region, but also, Anna and I and everybody else at public health will tell people, you should have questions. You are doing a medical thing to your body. You are considering it for your loved ones and your family. You should ask questions, right? That is making a good informed healthcare decision. But what we really encourage people to do is to seek out evidence-based sources, because I don't know if you're familiar with the internet, but it is a, what did I call it earlier? A grim landscape out there. And so some of those kind of myths that Anna debunked are just the surface level of misinformation. You can take yourself down a very deep and disturbing and confusing rabbit hole of COVID misinformation, which I do not recommend. But as part of this whole conversation piece, we really want people to think about what is the source of the information. So is it identifiable? Is it credentialed? What is the purpose of it? Is it reputable? And is it current, right? Because we're learning new things about COVID virtually every day. So there are things from the beginning of the pandemic that are no longer true or that we know different now. And so it is important to look at up-to-date information. And here's where I will say, public health is not the guardian or the gatekeeper of that information. We have a lot of it. We put a lot of it on our website. We have an FAQ page. We host a variety of reliable information pieces, but we're not it. We're not the only game in town. We'd encourage people to talk to their family physician, a nurse in their life, their pharmacist, right? The important thing is you are going to a source with credibility and who you can trust to give you a sort of thoughtful interpretation of the best evidence out there. Anna, next slide, please. And so Anna talked about some of those myths. I talked about some of them. Here's just a quick way to think this through. Start with the facts, warn about the myths, explain why they are not in fact correct, and then land on reinforcing that good information. And if you ever, if your congregation, if in your work, in your ministry, if you need more resources around this, we will gladly. We have a librarian, we have a couple of epidemiologists, we have data folks. I have learned in my year and several months at public health, if you turn on the tap and ask public health for information, you will get plenty. I guarantee you we can give you information until you very kindly ask us to maybe stop giving you all that information. We have lots, and we're very happy to share it. And the next slide, please. And here's the last piece: is if you've got a platform, we know that you do, and you want to share it, we're on all the social medias. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, it's always WDG Public Health. You don't even have to write this stuff yourself. If you want to just rebroadcast what we've got out there, some of it's a little bit fun, some of it's more serious. We try and put a breadth of stuff out there that's informational, it's directional. We answer a lot of questions. Poor Monica on our team is probably never going to go online again at the end of the pandemic, but we try our best to be responsive and to put enough stuff out there for people to both have what they need and also share it with those around them. Next slide, please. And so this is an ad you'll start to see. It's kind of brand new as of last week. This is the fundamental part of where we are in this vaccination program. Anna told you about the number we need to get that 75% target. And we'll continue at Public Health to do these presentations. I got more blazers I haven't worn yet. We'll continue to do media, we'll continue to do ads, but ultimately, to get us over the line, it's going to be groups having that discussion amongst them, people having that discussion between them. And that means now we're all part of the vaccination program, right? And ultimately, the most important conversation for someone to get vaccinated is the one that helps push them over the line. And that is very unlikely to be from someone at Public Health. And it's very likely to be someone in their life. So if you are thinking about that, that is the truest part of the last phase of this vaccination program. Is it's going to be I called it, if you're a sports person, like I know Reverend Borthwick is, we're deeply into the ground game portion of this. If you're a politics person, we're deeply into get out the vote here. But ultimately, it's going to take those of us who care and who have the time and inclination push this over the line with the people in their life, in their circle, in their audience. So that's it sort of from the formal piece. And now Anna and I are super happy to take any and all questions.
Thanks so much for the presentation. It was, I started writing questions down and then you answered them, so that was helpful. I'm happy to open up to the other folks that are here. If you have any questions, I have a couple, but happy to open up to you guys first if you like. Any one of you, you can unmute yourselves and ask a question if you like. Otherwise, I'll start asking some. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to both of you for doing this presentation. I just wanted to make comment and then give a couple of examples. Is that I think what we're into now is where people's conversation around vaccine is quite ideological now. So not necessarily the practicalities, but it's now getting into ideologies, which is a far more different, which is a larger and bigger conversation, which I don't imagine you can have full quality of conversation over, because you guys aren't the provincial government, so you don't make decisions on the provincial level, and you're also not the federal government, and so you don't make decisions on the federal level. But some examples that'll be represented by that is, why are we not taking more of a global approach to vaccine distribution, vaccinating the most vulnerable across the world, 45 plus, 50 plus, whatever your range is, before vaccinating an entire nation before it gets to other people? You'll get into things where have we set a precedent? Has the government set a precedent around the relationship between churches, any religious group, and the state's control? That's been a big thing in certain faith communities, not the one that I pastor, but that in faith communities where it is, okay, is a precedent being set here? Will we still have the freedoms that we've had in the past? And then obviously the conversation around human rights, specifically related to vaccines. So should I need to get vaccinated in order to have some of my own human rights, like the ability to hug my mom, or things of that nature? And then, as I said, I recognize your hands are tied as far as some of the provincial things, but I think there's, like, even in I subscribe to the New York Times Morning, and it came in around the difference around what the CDC was saying as far as the risk of contracting COVID outside versus what it actually is, which is so minimal. But yet we've had regulations in place over the last 6 or so weeks that have been like no outdoor activity at all. And then you have such a huge portion of our population, 57% of people already having their first vaccine. Why are people not receiving more flexibility as it relates to their outdoor activity and even some indoor activity if you now have family members who have the first vaccine? Like, again, I'm just sort of expressing that I truly feel for your position in this, but also recognizing that there is an ideology that also we have to figure out as a society how in Canada we want to live, and what sort of things we want to encourage others to do based upon our views of things. So I'm not really sure if it's more so a question more than it is a comment to say, we want to be presenting the facts. Of course, there is obviously a convenience. Like, I've been vaccinated. I got vaccinated April 20th. I'm assuming I'll get an email when I can register for the next one, which would be a question. And for us, it's probably more of a travel thing. But then the other question is, should I need to be vaccinated in order to travel? So there's all of those questions, I think, for people that are more like, that I've talked to, like, maybe I will eventually get vaccinated, but for now, I kind of wanted to stick it to the man, because they've really made my life awful for the last, year and a bit, and there's no one to really blame. So you guys get the short end of the stick. Anyways, just some comments and thoughts.
Well, I can't find a spot to disagree with you there.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I was struck with, as you were saying, that is, I do think all this is fraught. I think there's a ton of kind of C+ answers out there to a lot of these questions. But I think part of the genesis for us moving to this kind of conversational level is because, for lots of reasons, people, not everybody loves public health. I'm saddened to say, but I think the reality is arming anyone who is keen to talk about vaccines to have the conversation is more effective, but also more honest, so that people can have this discussion at the conversational level, right? We would be very unwise to assume that public health is the only one who can make thoughtful comment on this. Everybody has to decide this at kind of a personal level. And so arming people with the information to have it at the personal level is a huge part of this. And ultimately, people will make personal decisions, right? There will be sort of, I mean, we all live with various levels of sort of influence and control all the time. And so there will be some of those things. I think personally, one of the things I really agree with you is how we vaccinate the globe beyond, you know, hitting our numbers here in Canada is an extremely kind of salient point, because not just from a moral perspective, which I think is probably the place I would start, but also if we want to get real low down to the crass level, it is in our best interest to vaccinate the globe as quickly as possible, because, you know, the vaccines have worked really well against the variant so far, but you know, it doesn't take a lot for some freaky bug to come out of this that the vaccines are not great against. And so getting people vaccinated from a moral level is an absolute imperative, but getting them vaccinated to continue to protect all of us at other level is, I think, extremely important. Did I answer your non-question with a half decent non-answer there?
Yeah, you know, again, I feel for you. And I'm sure you didn't get into public health to solely have to deal with a pandemic, you know, and I worry too that is another reality of this, is that people's hope and faith in health in general is being affected, or even people's belief in around science. Because, you know, there are varying people with different degrees that are saying, you know, different things. And, you know, the scientists that are coming out and saying, yes, we should take a global approach before a national approach, you know, then that science is saying, no, that's not as important as getting our nation vaccinated first. So, you know, I feel for you guys. Thanks for all the work that you do. And I mean, we had someone issue a corporate prayer during our online service on Sunday, you know, that was hopefully, Lord Jesus, people get vaccinated. And so, you know, we are certainly, I don't want to have the day come where, and I don't know if maybe some of the others in the room would feel the same, where, you know, someone's not going to send their kids to the youth drop-in unless everybody at the drop-in's been vaccinated, or someone's not going to register their kids for a kids ministry program on a Sunday morning or midweek because, well, not everyone will be vaccinated. So the challenge is also, I think, around the rationality question. And that was another thing that was commented on in the New York Times one morning, which was eventually COVID has to become a rational fear rather than an irrational one, the same way that we have other things in our life that are risks that are rational. Like I drive, I do some other things. So I'm more interested in some of the social long-term implications of this, the messaging around being safe, being comfortable, all of those sorts of things, and how that's going to affect human interaction and development.
I think that last piece is hugely important, and it's actually something you'll see. Anna, please don't let me get on a soapbox about the CDC rollout, because nobody wants that. But one of the things I think is really important is, as we move through these pieces of the roadmap that the province has put out, is that we help people understand that we have pieces that are back to normal, what that means to normalize normal, and then to help people understand what are the pieces that are still in place. Because I think there is a real, and I approached this from a very optimistic standpoint, and then I watched the CDC rollout, and I read the giant New York Times piece on Meet the Evermaskers, and I think you'll see a piece from us coming towards the end of the summer where we really start to help people understand what it means to move through these steps of the roadmap, but also to help people embrace some of that. what we don't want is for people, we don't want to swing the pendulum all the way the other way into, Excel gum commercials levels of like post-pandemic activity. If it's your jam, you could do it, I suppose, once we get there. But we do want to help people embrace the things that are kind of safe and helpful, right? And if we land in a place in the roadmap where it's very safe for us to gather in church, to eat in a restaurant, to go to the movies, we want people to be able to approach those things with comfort, right? And so that's a huge piece from us that you'll see over the summer.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. I think you raised some really interesting points there, Matt. And I think since this is going to be shared with churches and church members and other faith communities and their memberships as well, and hopefully this can go be distributed widely. I think what you're raising up are some of those ideological, moral, practical policy conversations that those communities are going to have. I mean, to your points around, the global vaccine rollouts, I think one of the things that faith communities can do is advocate to government levels and say, we can't be hoarding vaccines. We should be making sure that we're spreading them across the world if we have the ability to do so, and make decisions based on that kind of optics of mindset, for the good of the entire globe as opposed to just our own nation. And I think the other things that it's going to raise up are things like, you make a really good point. Are faith communities going to make decisions or policies around, you can't be in person unless you're vaccinated? Sort of just speaking to some of the points that have come up in this presentation around, it's going to become inconvenient to not be vaccinated. But are faith communities willing to go that far? Sort of what the school system does, where it says you have to be vaccinated in order to attend school in person, which will raise up questions of, well, we'll keep virtual, so we'll give that option, but still that it speaks to a sense of human rights or individual rights of like, I can't participate. So is that what's going to happen? And is that the kind of messaging we want to give as faith communities? Those are some of the, certainly those questions that we're going to need to process. Just personally, because we're distributing this widely, I would offer that, just a counterpoint to the, sticking it to the man by not getting my vaccination when we're trying to be vaccination champions. That's one way of sticking it to the man, but you're also sticking it to the rest of the world if we're having to wait for a certain percentage. So I would offer that it's a bit misguided. If you want to stick it to the man, write your MPP, write your MP, advocate for something different, use your voice, your privilege, or whatever you got going for you. Mark or Jan, any follow-up questions from you guys? I want to be sensitive to Danny and Anna's time as well.
Yeah, if the audio doesn't come through, please let me know. I'm on country internet.
No problem. You're good so far.
All right. I have two questions. The first would be just around a lot of the students that I work with are from lower income neighborhoods. And so for students that are from lower income neighborhoods, like what is available in terms of access, keeping in mind a lot of them don't have reliable transportation, or they're from single parent homes, and by extension for students that are battling with severe anxiety disorders, will there be opportunities for them to get vaccinated?
Looks like Mark dropped out, but yeah, I think he's talking about those who are in low income and how is that going to work with public health, and also those who have anxiety issues and probably coming to a mass vaccination site's going to be challenging. You guys want to speak to those two pieces?
Yeah, so why don't I speak to the kind of policy part, and then Anna can speak to some of the practicalities of it.
Yeah.
So at sort of the first level, the goal of the vaccine program is to make it easy for people to get vaccinated. So whether that's from a geographic or a tactical level, the goal is to get you vaccinated as close to where you live as possible, to provide it in a variety of venues, and for folks who, so let me give you a couple of examples. So the reason why you can get it at a pharmacy in your doctor's office is because you can't run a clinic everywhere. So that's the first piece. The second piece is for those who are sort of living at home and receiving home care and cannot leave to go to a clinic. EMS have gone out, have worked with the family health teams and other partners to go and deliver homebound folks of a vaccination. We have a variety of accessibility services for folks who need it at a clinic. We have the ability to support people getting vaccinated at the clinic in a variety of ways, depending on what they need. So the goal really is to eliminate whatever barriers exist for somebody to get a shot in the arm. For people with specific kind of considerations, we pretty strongly encourage them to reach out to public health so that we can make sure that we understand their specific needs, because all those specific needs will be different.
That's right, Danny. A few things that I would add is that we're working really closely with our school boards right now, Mark. So we're going to have protected time for school age and family vaccination. So that'll be a specific clinic setup to make it a little bit more accessible. As Danny said, we have pop-up clinics in a whole variety of locations. So for folks who find it a bit harder to get to our mass immunization sites, we work really closely with our partners to find neighborhoods or venues where we might benefit from a pop-up clinic. And like Danny said, when it comes to accommodations, we strive to accommodate everyone with any kind of accommodation they might require. So if we're speaking specifically about folks who have lots of vaccine anxiety, which we've seen throughout those 144,000 folks that we've vaccinated, you can give us a call after you've booked your appointment or shoot us an email. And there's information in the appointment confirmation email. And we'll maybe take you into a private room or have another type of accommodation that would make you feel more comfortable. Or like Danny said, there's pharmacies and primary care if those venues are a little bit more comfortable for you.
Thanks, Andy. And is that helpful, Mark? Any follow-up to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good to know. Thanks. A second question would be for students that maybe are in split homes, so they live in one city with mom and another city with dad. Or for people like me who live, like I work in Guelph, but live just across the border in the Waterloo region. For people like us, what do we like? Can we get vaccinated in Guelph if it's available sooner?
Yeah,
Mark, I will say this confidently: get it wherever you can get it the fastest.
for sure. That's what we say. So when you sign up on our registration, our pre-registration system, Mark, you can sign up through a workplace address. That's fully not a problem at all. Or the student could pick any home address. So if they have a home address that's in Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph, and one that's outside, just sign up with the one that's within Wellington, Dufferin, and Guelph.
That's great, thanks.
And just to follow up on that, one of the things I was going to raise up or point out was in our own family, we're having a bit of FOMO for at least one of our children. She's 16. She's been pre-registered with Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Public Health, but then she's hearing and seeing, and people are posting, which is good to post that you got your vaccination, but it's creating within her of like, well, why haven't they called me yet? Why am I not getting one? What's going on? So we sort of plugged into that because 3 of the 4 of our household are vaccinated. And unfortunately we got sucked into that FOMO. So we contacted like the Ontario portal, and what I discovered there was over the weekend, I could have got a vaccination the next day through the Ontario portal, identifying her, like her age, all that kind of stuff, and her address. I just had to drive to Toronto. And they did note that you have to have your second vaccination in the same sort of location. So what it offered me was Toronto and Hamilton as appointments that were available, like either the next day or within the week, or certainly within a couple of weeks. We decided to pump the brakes a little and just wait and be patient for the 42 or whatever it is, 1,000 that you guys are processing right now. But we found that interesting. And then we actually called the Ontario portal, and they advised us that essentially you have to work through Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Public Health. That's essentially what they told us. So that's why we didn't get any appointments for Kitchener or
Right.
like Waterloo region or our region. It was like Hamilton and Toronto. So just
What I
raise it
would
up.
say about that is if she pre-registered more than 5 days ago, you can call our booking line. And I
Okay,
can shoot that number over to you, and they will find out what's happened with that pre-registration and,
Okay.
and send you a code.
That'd be
And-
awesome. Yeah.
And the reality of what you'll see both for the remainder of the first doses and for the second doses is we have really up until just recently with the vaccine been operating from sort of a position of scarcity, right? The reason you saw, priority groups, hotspots, and all these pieces is because we're prioritizing a limited supply. I should say the province is prioritizing a limited supply is probably a little bit more accurate. But what you'll see coming up is shrinking timelines, both in terms of pre-registering and getting an appointment. It is a very real possibility that the time between the first and second doses will shrink because we are just now going to have so much vaccine available to us that these things become less of an issue. So it's been certainly not the January to May that we would have designed, but the reality is, we're operating with a brand new vaccine that didn't exist a year ago at a time when literally the balance of the whole world wants the same thing that didn't exist a year ago. And so that doesn't change the perspective of anyone waiting for a vaccine or waiting for their second dose. But now we're finally entering that phase where we've got the access we need to really rock through this thing in a hurry.
That's awesome, Danny. Jan, I want to give you an opportunity since you did join us today. Do you have any questions you want to ask as well?
No, not at this point. I had similar questions as Mark did, and they were sufficiently answered. So thank you.
Awesome, thanks. So I'll turn it over to you guys just to say we are recording this, so this will be, and I'm planning on sharing it widely with those who I sent it out to, the invitation out to. I'll also be following up with Danny and Anna around, I'd love to get a few of those visual ads that you showed in your slides. If I could flip those with the email
Sure
so that
can.
people can use those for their social media. The booking number, Anna, would be great as well as a follow-up. But just sort of wanted to leave the last words to you guys. Any sort of final key messaging you want to hit home, and then we'll be so grateful. We're grateful for your time, and we'll wrap up in a couple minutes.
Well, I suppose we are in fact grateful for your time. And I am someone who grew up going to church, and so I understand the role of the people on this call is both very sacred and very personal. And so every conversation with that you have through your ministry about the vaccine is something that's fairly precious and that involves a lot of trust. So as you are doing that, if you're having those conversations, we obviously thank you. And that ad that Anna put up in the slides about you, the kind of majestic plural you, might be the most important conversation someone has about the vaccine. So thank you for that. And I suppose the last piece is we will go anywhere and talk to anyone, whether that's your congregation, it's your colleagues, it's other groups you belong to. We will gladly put on a blazer and spend an hour with anyone. So John has my contact details, and we are extremely happy to do that.
Yeah. And I think the only thing that I would add to that is, after we hang up, we're not gone. I'm sure you can get in touch with us through Reverend John. And if you have any other questions that come up, or any other difficult things that you hear or myths that you'd like busted, that's what we're here for. So just let us know, and we would love to help with that.
That's awesome. So appreciate your time, Anna and Danny, and thanks for joining us, Matt and Mark and Jan, as well as part of this conversation. Within the next day or two, I'll send out this video or the link to it for everybody, and make sure that maybe there's some extra stuff plus your contact information. If a faith community wanted to have you in for a conversation with their leadership, or to think through some things, that sounds great. As you say, let's do this together. And so I'm glad that as faith communities in the city of Guelph and beyond, we're able to do that. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good rest of your days.